Welcome to the Expert's Journey podcast, where we're all about creating your path to impact. Join your hosts, Dixie Mary Carlton from Indie Expert Publishing and Mr. Web Marketing Brad Houck, as we look at how you can grow your business and influence by leveraging your knowledge for profit. Welcome to the Expert's Journeys podcast, and in this episode, Dixie and myself will be digging into running your own workshops. Running your own workshops is a powerful way to connect with your viewers, to share your expertise with your audience, and to generate income. By carefully planning and executing them, you can create valuable experiences that both benefit you and your participants. In this episode, we're going to explore what we believe are the key strategies to ensure your workshops are engaging, impactful, and profitable. Good afternoon, Dixie.
Good afternoon, or wherever you happen to be in the world, Brad.
Yes, it's good afternoon today, not good morning, just for a change. But that's the great thing about podcasting is it doesn't matter what time of day it is, we can still record.
Absolutely.
Very hosting your own workshops. The first thing I got is my thoughts on, how do you price it for profit, designing engaging content, choosing the right format, and upsells and cross-sell opportunities. So I've got quite a few notes here to look at. So where would you like to start?
Well, I think it's actually a really good place to start would be, why would you want to bother doing all that work to create a workshop when you've already written a book? Because it does sound like a lot of work.
That's a good point. So why would we?
Like that, why do I want to do that when I could just maybe opt for being a keynote presenter or a coach? And I know that I've got some thoughts on this, but tell me, why do you think it's such a great idea to do workshops?
Well, I think it actually opens up a lot more to people what you want to teach them. I suppose it's like saying, okay, well, I've got this book, there's a lot of content in there, or I know about this topic and I could teach you a lot of things, but having a workshop gives you the opportunity to actually show people that. It gives you an opportunity to get them in the room, answer some questions that they're having, show them some specific techniques to deal with whatever is your topic. But also to then show people that you are a good speaker, and that if they haven't seen you speak before, and that you are a great teacher and all of those things, because there's so much more to it than just the content that you're teaching people. There's the whole experience of being there with other people, the meet and greet beforehand, the networking. There's just so much to running a workshop.
Okay, I'm convinced. I think it's a great idea. And I wanted to segue into the fact that I believe you're going to make far more money out of having a workshop than doing keynote speaking. That goes straight into where we start to talk about how do you get leverage on your book, create workshops, and then how do you price those to make sure that you do get real value for yourself as the content creator to ensure that your book and your workshop works for you. How do you go about pricing your workshops?
So I think there's a whole way of doing it. I think, number one, you don't do it for free. Okay. So my experience tells me, and from talking to a lot of other people, that when you do free workshops, most of the audience doesn't turn up. So it doesn't matter whether you charge $10 or $100, more people will turn up if they've been charged and they've paid. So that's the first thing, is you do need to charge for your time. Second thing I look at is, how much is the venue going to cost me? So, if the venue costs me $250 for the morning for 3 hours, then I need at least 10 people paying me $25 to cover the cost of the venue. That's pretty straightforward. Then anything on top of that is profit. Of course, there's multiple ways to look at profit. There's profit off the front end, and then there's profit off the back end. So, for example, I used to run SEO workshops, and I'd have business people come and sit in the workshops to learn more about SEO. And what that confirmed in their eyes was that, yes, they were capable of doing it, but they didn't have time to do it. So then they would hire me and my company to do the work for them. So it was an interesting side effect that people come to learn, but then they'll often pay you to do the work for them. So pricing it, I think, depends on your ultimate outcome. I think as long as you cover your costs and your time, it works for you as long as you think about it that way.
Do you price it differently if you've got an online workshop versus a live workshop? Do you differentiate between, how you deliver in terms of pricing?
Look, it's a good question. I think the current thinking on that is that it's the same experience for the people that are going there, except they're not in the room. Now, I personally would maybe make it a little bit cheaper, because when you're in the room, there is the networking and the other parts of the experience that you get that you don't necessarily get in an online discussion or an online forum for training. But that said, your experience and your knowledge is worth a certain amount of money, and there should be a minimum amount that you should charge for people to learn that.
Right. What about for those people who think that, sitting on Zoom, for example, for 3 hours for a workshop is just too hard? If you're going to be delivering them online, do you make them deliberately a series that's shorter on a per weekly basis, for example? Or do you push through and say, look, this is going to be a 3-hour workshop, regardless of how it's delivered? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I have very short attention span. So 3 hours to me is like a lot. They're new, they're not experienced with you. They're maybe just starting out on the path of learning. But if you've got a group that's, say, been coming to your workshops for 6 months, then you might be able to do 2 hours or 3 hours. But it comes down to structuring then. People need breaks. So, every 3/4 of an hour, you need a 5-minute break and let everybody get up and go and get a drink and things like that. So again, thinking about how you structure it and who the audience is how you should make the decisions. But I really would not ever sell a 3-hour workshop to people who didn't know me, no matter what, because I just don't think anybody's that good for 3 hours straight.
Yeah, and I think retaining their attention, especially online, is so much harder than if they're in the real room. So let's talk about when you're delivering a workshop. And I know you do more workshops than I do by, quite a considerable number each year. What do you think is important in terms of structure for your workshop? Like if you've written a book and you want to base your workshop on your book content, how much do you want to give away?
Well, I think you can take very tiny pieces and go into a lot more detail. So it's very much about choosing the key things that people want to learn, and you'll find that through conversations with them. People understand most of your book, but then the other sections where they go, actually, I'd like some help with that, or I'd like to know more about that. I think that's the hint towards what your workshop should be about. But then that also depends on the practicality of your book. If, say, take search engine optimization, it lends itself more to some hands-on, sitting down, demonstrating how to use the computer to do that sort of stuff. Whereas, other sorts of things, such as mental health, might be much more difficult to deliver in that way. So again, it comes down to picking the bits that will work for a workshop. And being an expert, you should know what those are. You've probably sat through workshops on that topic in your own learning to become the expert you are.
Good point. And in that respect, if you are delivering a workshop that is maybe part of a series of workshops that you've delivered, or an extension of other workshops that you've already created and delivered on, do you think that there's merit in creating something that is part of a series, or should each workshop be something that stands on its own?
I think there's value in having a series if you sell them as a series. So if you develop a course that you're delivering in a way, that's what it is. We're talking about here is a series of modules on ongoing topics. It's really a course. Then that's fine to go, each month we're going to meet for an hour and we're going to do that, as a face-to-face or online or whatever it is. The other alternative is you might be running individual workshops as lead generation to see what's working or not. So you might run one on AI, and you might run one on writing courses, and you might run one on how to plan your first book. It's really about different people, different audiences, or it could be all the same audience along a stream of, say digital marketing as a stream. It really comes down to who you're selling it to and what the goal is. Is it a course, or is it just workshops to teach people topics?
Yeah, and I think that brings me back to always the concept of you start with the draft, which is obviously the title of one of my books, but you always have to think with the end in mind. So for my money, I would always be thinking about, when I'm working with someone on developing their book, how is this going to translate into a workshop or a keynote? How are you going to make sure that it goes well beyond the book? And I think developing some structure to the plan around what your content will be for a workshop, even right at the beginning, is worth doing. And just leaving it to chance at the end, once you've kind of winged it and thought, okay, well, now I'll create a workshop, doesn't necessarily give you the same developmental benefits if you have left it till just what you think and feel at the time. You've really got to have a really good structure all the way along, right from the beginning of, I'm going to share my content. I'm going to do it across books and workshops and keynotes and other articles and podcasting and all of those things, because you have to be that well organized. You've got to think about the end in mind.
Absolutely. And on the reverse side, you can run workshops and then sell your book off the back of the workshop too. So if you take a small section of the book and you run a workshop off of that, and then say to people, well, if you'd like to know more, you can buy a copy of my book. They can buy a copy of your book off the back. That also then gives you a little bit more knowledge into their hands that you've created. And then when you offer the next workshop, which may be more expensive, or it might be a full course or something like that, you've kind of built them up there. It's a bit like the front end of your sales funnel in a way. So, courses have so many places and workshops have in so many places in a business. I started doing workshops as a way of just getting my name out there as a specialist in the area of digital marketing. And I didn't charge that much for them. I think it was $47 or $50. And it wasn't a lot of money for a 3-hour workshop, but people would come, and then I would say to them, well, if you want to come again next time, bring a friend for free. So we get more people in the room the next time. And I had my regulars that came back, and they would bring new people, and then those new people would bring new people. Now, I wasn't making a heap of money off the workshops, but I was building my name, and I was getting speaking jobs from them, because they would see me speak, and they would say to someone in one of their organizations, oh, why don't we get Brad on to speak, about digital marketing at our next conference or whatever it happens to be. So it's just such a versatile thing, and it really doesn't cost that much to do.
Good points. And so that really comes into my next question. How many people do you think is a good number to have in a workshop? Do you think that there's a magic formula around the numbers?
1. 1 is a good number. No. Look, I honestly don't care how many people in the room, although I'd like to cover my costs. So if I get one person in the room, I do a one-on-one workshop. I still deliver the workshop, but we work more closely together than what I would if there was 10 people in the room. It's always more exciting if there's 10 or 20 people, but I have done plenty of workshops where I've had 5 people in the room, and we have had the best morning. We've had so much fun, and we've all learnt so much through the process because we've had more time to talk, more time to ask questions, and all those sorts of things. So, I just would not stress about filling the room unless, it's going to cost you too much money, in which case you really need to look at that at the front end and choose venues that allow you to deliver the course at a lower price point, or you have an upsell.
Do you think there is a difference between running a training session and a workshop?
I think there is, because generally a training session would be something attached to an audience that already knows you, in my way of thinking, in that it's a very, very structured sort of thing. I know a workshop is a training session, and I know I would use the same method of teaching, just like any teacher does, where you introduce the concept and you demonstrate and you get people to do a bit, and then you talk some more, and so on and so forth. So it's a structured learning program. But I think from my perspective, you've got different sorts of workshops there. I suppose in essence, they are all training, but whether they're top of funnel or bottom of funnel is the difference.
Okay. And do you think that there should be a difference in price between a workshop and a training program or a training session?
Again, I think it depends whether they're on the top end of the funnel or the bottom end of the funnel. If they're on the top of the funnel and you're trying to get people to know you and to buy you, that's relatively cheap. Whereas if you're selling to a corporate client and they're saying, can you come in and train my people, and they're requesting you to do specific stuff, then that's expensive.
Yes, I think. And I know I'm throwing some really tough questions at you, but I'm just thinking about all of the questions that I get asked when we start to talk about what people are doing with their books beyond their books. And these are the things that people most want to know about workshops, in my experience. What are some of the Q&As that you get asked regularly about running workshops?
Generally speaking, should do it online or should do it in person. That's a huge one, especially these days. It's like, well, I can reach the whole world if I do it online. It's like, yes, but how big's your email list? Is it the whole world or is it just New Zealand? So, that's super important in the decision itself. The other thing is people really value face-to-face training. There's something about it that's different. There's nothing better than being in a room with a group of people doing a workshop or doing some training. There's just something about it. You ask any speaker, they'll tell you it's better to be in the room than being on Zoom. So I think it comes down to the best way to reach your audience. If it's all of Australia, then it's going to be hard for them to get to the Gold Coast, for example. So that's where a online one might be good. Alternatively, if you have a newsletter list of 10,000 people in Australia and you want to run a workshop on the Gold Coast, then I say go for it as far as face-to-face goes. Out of that 10,000, you're definitely going to get a few that want to fly up, not for a half day, but for a full day at least, to see you and to hear you, train them. So that's one I always get. But I think a lot of people don't value online training as much. I think there's a higher do not turn up rate for online than there is for face-to-face.
Well,
but you'll get higher numbers online because anybody can sign up. And so, it's that weighing up game. I think everybody wants 1,000 people in their training sessions or their workshops. Let's face it. We all want everybody there. But in the end, what you want is people who are actually interested in taking the next step with you. So you want the 10% that actually want to buy you.
I think that's a really good point, because again, it's about how do you get leverage on your content and the best overall outcome for you based on what style of delivery you want to do. So for example, some people really do prefer to do a full training program versus a workshop, or even running a retreat. And we haven't talked about retreats, but I'd like to come back to that. And some people really do prefer just to write a lot more content and put out more books and maybe do some keynote work. So I think it comes down to what you're comfortable with as well. Personally, I much prefer doing a workshop than a keynote because I feel that I'm a lot more fluid in how I'm delivering the content, and I can stop and interact more with the people that are in the room. So I prefer that level of engagement. That's not to say that I would turn down a keynote versus a workshop, but I think that there's a lot more personal content that you can bring to the table and share more fluidly with whatever's going on in the room, whatever people actually are wanting to, maybe in some cases, pivot slightly towards. So that's my preference. But a couple of weeks ago, I attended a retreat, and a retreat is something that is a whole new level of workshop, and that in many instances runs over 2 or 3 days, as this one did. You may have other speakers that come in and do their short workshop pieces or keynote pieces within those workshops, within that retreat. You might do other things that break out and make sure everybody feels good and friendly and has networking opportunities and meals and gin tasting or yoga sessions or whatever. And I think you can charge a substantial amount more for a retreat. But where do you sit, Brad, on the viability of people taking 2 or 3 days out to learn that much information in a condensed time frame?
I think that comes down to who you are. I don't think I could fill a room for 3 days. And yet I know people would probably, come and work with me for 3 days if I gave them the opportunity. Sometimes it's about self-esteem, I think. But, a retreat's a whole nother level of cost from a business perspective. If you don't sell it, then you're left with covering the costs of the whatever venue you're using that you've booked and all of those other things as well. So there is a lot of weight on somebody. So if you've taken the time to build up over a series of workshops, a good list of people, and you've got a good following, then I think running a retreat or a mastermind or whatever you want to call those weekends away is a great idea, because you've now got a large enough list that there is going to be a group of people that will willingly pay, 2 to 10 to 20 grand, whatever it happens to be, to spend the weekend with you and to fly there and to pay for accommodation. But it's not something I feel that you should try and launch into before you start running some workshops of your own, just generally speaking. You just really do need to have some sort of list that you can leverage to get those people there. And that doesn't happen overnight. It does take time.
That's great advice. My final question is, how much effort do you think needs to go into doing good handouts? And like in some instances, a whole booklet or just 1 or 2 sheets of paper, or people bring their own, writing pads. What do you like to do with regards to the handouts and the worksheets scenario for a workshop?
So again, it depends on your purpose of doing it. I think like it takes a lot of work to develop a good worksheet. So from that perspective, it's much easier to develop a slide for your presentation and get people to make notes in their own books. Now, there's a couple of reasons I do like that. One is people tend to have a book that they take with them that they keep all their notes in. So that's going to be put away and stored each year or each month whenever they run out. And that's going to carry those notes. And then they can go back and find those notes, which I've done many times in the past myself. But if you are going to produce a booklet, it does give you the opportunity to put advertising in there for other courses, other books, other whatevers that you want to sell, one-on-one training, private coaching, whatever it is. So there is that as well that then goes home with them. So I think if you can balance that, maybe with say an A3 that folds in half, that they, fill in some sections and then the rest are the activities they tend to do in their book. So they keep the activities in their book. I think that's a good balance. But it's definitely worth considering, but I would never let it hold me back from running a workshop just because I didn't have time to make a worksheet. I'd rather just put some extra slides in there, and that can be done relatively quickly, and then get people to make notes and do their working and their programming or whatever it is that you want to do in their book or on their laptop with them. Oh, absolutely. Perfect for beginners because it just gives people a chance to be in a small room with a small group of people without all the stress of, say, being on stage necessarily. Absolutely. In the Micro Course Profits book, lots of stuff in there for anyone looking to run courses or workshops. Plenty of stuff to get you started. So, well, thanks for joining Dixie and I on Expert's Journey today. Remember, running workshops can be a lot of fun and is very profitable, even if it's just the top of your funnel. It's all about leveraging your expertise to create impact. If you've got any questions or thoughts, drop us a review or reach out. We'd love to hear from you. If you like this episode about workshops, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it. If you need help writing a book, see Dixie at indieexpertspublishing.com. And if you want help with AI or online marketing, book a free chat with me at mrwebmarketing.com. We appreciate you tuning in, and we look forward to having you with us again.